Hello, hello, and welcome. You're listening to Light Sprinkles, and I am Spring Ulrich, and it is my intention to sprinkle as much love and light and healing tips and tools as I possibly can to facilitate you in springing forward in your life. So, today I am talking about a topic of Tumble Bumble. That is today's topic, Tumble Bumble and shadows. So, today I, as I was doing my journaling and meditation and honestly falling asleep a little bit, I woke up and I had the topic of my mind, Tumble Bumble, which is a beautiful book that my children and I love to read together. And it is a fabulous book. It is a book by Felicia Bond, and it's a beautifully, wonderfully illustrated picture book. Um, it's got a little boy, and it starts out with an ant, and bumps into a pig and a crocodile and a bee, and it just goes through on this beautiful, beautiful journey. And the book is such a lovely little find. If you have children, I highly recommend that you read this book with them. And it really speaks of the wonderful tumbling and bumbling that we do in life and all of the friends and the experiences that we have along the way and in the journey. And it even talks about really lightheartedly about some fears and having your tail owied and singing a song to make you feel better. There's just these really wonderful moments and pleasure experiences of the crocodile and the bee and the cat and the ant and the pig, all just toddling and waddling and and walking very silly in their walk in a line, following each other in this really fun, fashionable way throughout the book. And how they bump into a toad, scare the toad, and bump into the pig and hurt its tail to no avail, and sing a song. Anyway, they end up at a yellow house, and they go in, and they look for something good to eat, which is wonderful, right? Aren't we always looking for some wonderful treat? And they also go through in the book Tumble Bumble, they go through in and they talk about tumbling, bumbling up the stairs. And to me, that's a really beautiful metaphor for how we tumble, bumble up our stairs of life toward the things that we're going toward, our dreams, our passions, things that are difficult. And we can do it in a very silly way. We can do it in a very playful and joyous and vibrant and childlike way, or we can do it very serious. And I love how the book talks about they opened doors and checked for bears. And to me, that is really wonderful that they open doors, that they're willing to open the doors. Because how often in our lives do we get afraid and not open those doors of opportunity and swing them open and say, hey, we're going to look and see what is behind that door, what is happening within that closet or within that room of our minds or of our hearts, or the things in our lives that the opportunities. Are we opening that door? Are we taking that leap? Are we taking that risk and checking for bears? And to me, checking for bears is that checking for the fears and the danger, what lies in behind that door. And it's a really fun read. They end up just taking a rest and napping and finding all these friends as they count them throughout the book. So it's a really fun read. And so that book came to my mind, The Tumble Bumble, and I really looked at that as how such a metaphor for life, how it is that beautiful dance of tumbling and bumbling, even from being we start life out as a small child, and there's the tumble and the bumble to before we get to crawl, and then before we get to walk, and then before we get to run. That it starts out as a very tumble and a bumble situation, and yet the child continues on and always gets back up and keeps trying and keeps going until they can walk, until they can run. And I just felt like that was a really beautiful metaphor for a topic today, because how often in our lives do we tumble or do we bumble and have our life completely just set back in really hard ways where it really hurts when we fall. And I had an experience yesterday. In fact, I was chasing around my son, and we were having a really, really glorious time together yesterday and having so much fun. And he said, hey, let's race to the trampoline. And I love being on the trampoline with my kids. I love jumping on it with them. I love trampolines. So I was like, okay, I'll race you out there. And of course, my son is super fast, so it's not really a surprise that he beat me there. And he was all proud of himself because he cut in front of me and ran off and got into the trampoline. So we're bouncing and we're having a good time. And my son proceeds to tell me how he does that to his little brother and cuts him off and runs into the trampoline and beats him most often. And so I then thought I would try to be like him and move like him really swiftly and quickly. And at the same moment, my son came in closer, and sometimes his spatial awareness is not quite as aware. And he didn't touch me or anything, but it was just the way he came down and bounced in my area, and I wasn't expecting it. So my foot, I landed improperly. I landed on the outer side of my foot with it twisted in on my ankle, on the pinky side of my toe on my right foot. And I came down with pretty much all of my weight on that one foot. And I wasn't expecting the trampoline to be where it was at to take that. And it really twisted my ankle in such a way that it was excruciatingly painful. Took me out, tumbled right down onto the trampoline. It caught my breath. It was so painful, and I just laid there and just held it and held my breath for a minute. And then I remembered, breathe in the life, breathe it in. It's okay. I just kept telling myself to remember to breathe because I was in such a shock. I could feel my body actually going into shock. And I was like, oh no, this is intense. This is a severe one. And tried not to put too many labels around it, but just recognizing how much pain and acute pain I was in, that it was all I could do to just rock and try to get into a position, hold it and rub it. And then the tears came, and then I was crying and whining and just like a child would, except for probably more held back. And because my son was there, and he knew I was in pain, but I also didn't want to freak him out. And I was just rolling around and trying to take care of my foot as best as possible. And I know from previous experiences of rolling my ankle in my jogs or runs throughout my life that if I continue to walk it off or continue to move, even though it's excruciatingly painful, that my ankle actually gets back into fluidity and flexibility and moves more toward healing in a much quicker fashion than if I just keep it immobile, keep it still, and don't give it the flexibility and the movement and to continue to stretch it. So I, of course, gave myself the rest that I needed to be able to catch my breath and to move through the most excruciatingly painful parts and continue to breathe into it. And after that happened, that was a lot. I mean, it was, I'm telling you, it was some pain. There was twice. I went into tears and crying, like actually out loud with my voice, and then calmed myself again, and then it rose up again, and I started crying again, like, oh no, like, why did I do this? And of course, some thoughts were going through my head of, just, oh, how come I did this to myself? And, not this foot, and, just a little bit of the, oh, why does this have to happen? And just kind of a little bit of that negative stuff. And then I caught it pretty quickly and said, no, I can heal this. I'm okay. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be able to, my body's amazing. It can heal quickly. It can create a magic magical, amazing healing, and it can do it right now. My body knows how to do this. So after I was done with the second episode of crying, I was able to then tap into and tune into my prana energy knowledge in healing and energy work and just clearing out my aura. And I just did lots of energy work where I pull the energy without touching, even just to pull the energy out using my hands and flicking off the negative energy to allow the aura to be repaired and to allow my energy body to facilitate the most quick and easeful healing of my body and get all of the junk or any of the clouded heaviness out of the way, the trauma. So it was clearing the trauma and doing energy work with my hands to facilitate that through my foot, bringing the energy down and flicking it off. Anyway, prana energy work, pretty awesome stuff. So I did that for several minutes all over my foot, and then I crawled myself off of the trampoline and slowly lowered myself off, and then just walked along the trampoline and did the perimeter and just walked and walked. And stretched my foot and walked it. And I, of course, asked my son while I was doing my prana energy work to go grab me an ice pack. So I immediately got the ice onto my foot and my ankle to facilitate as much as I possibly could, pulling out all the stops, knowing what I know how to do in the physical support, doing it energetically, physically. And so then I did the perimeter around the trampoline. And after walking walking around my backyard, and just continuing to walk while my son's with me, he was very compassionate and very sweet. And he's like, "I'm not leaving your side, Mom." And he was basically holding on to me to make sure I wasn't going to stumble or fall. And it was nice to have that emotional support. Even though I could have done it without him, it was just nice to have that extra person to lean on and to be there. So he was really supportive and really beautiful. And it was really a sweet time. And after I walked, I said, you know what, I'm ready to go get into the river. And I'd already been in the river earlier, so I was actually pretty wet from being in the river and swimming in the river from earlier, a little bit damp on my clothes. And I just said, I'm going to go get in the river, sit my ankle in the river again, and my feet, just to really give it that cold plunge. And so I went back and I sat in the river, and my kids joined me. We were just hanging out down there. And of course I was very slow getting down into, the area of the water where the embankment was, because it's pretty rocky and it's not just a straight shot or an easy, it's relatively easy, but with an angle such that I just wanted to make sure that I was being mindful of my steps. So mindfully I went down, got into the river, and I sat there and I just relaxed it. I moved it. I rotated my ankle back and forth. I flapped my feet up and down and just gave it the motion that I could. And when I felt complete with that, I got up and I went in, and then it was time to take a bath. So then I took an Epsom salt bath and got warmed up and just soaked in that Epsom salt and enjoyed that. And I thought, wow, that's great. It's feeling pretty decent. I did feel that there was still some tightness, and I knew that the ligaments and the muscles had been strained and stretched, and I could still feel that sensation, but it was not near as painful, and I could actually walk, and I was able to continue moving around and going about the rest of my day relatively normal, with just that minor, it was talking to me, but not super loud. And then later in that evening, I kept the commitment that I had made to myself the previous night, and I did my toenails. And in that, I did another soak in with my feet in the water with marbles at the bottom and Epsom salt, and I just did my toenails and enjoyed the Epsom salt bath and did my toenails. And when I put my foot up later, I realized, wow, my ankle really is swollen. It was really swollen around the ankle, and I could tell really the difference. And even now, today, it still has some swelling around the ankle. And I woke up this morning, and my husband and I quite often will get up in the morning and we'll go for a jog around our property of about a mile. And today I said, honey, do you want to go for a walk? So I wasn't going to not move. I knew that I needed to get out. I knew I needed to move and walk and get the fluids moving and get everything mobile. So we did. We went out and walked, and I tried for a second to see how it would feel to give it a light jog. And I was like, nope, that's pushing it too much. It's too much of a pain sensation, discomfort. I'm going to listen to my body. I'm going to honor that. And I'm just going to do a brisk walk. So that's what we ended up doing. And I'll tell you what, I am amazed for as much pain as I was in and how much I had really shocked it and really come down on it. I knew that it was a pretty significant injury. And with as much force and intensity and shock that I felt my body going into from the experience, I knew that it could take a while, or I knew that it was, because I've had sprained ankles before, and I know they can take a long time to heal. And with everything that I did, it was a wonderful opportunity in that stumbling and that bumbling that I did to have myself have the opportunity to go, wow, look how fast my body can heal. Look at how quickly it is healing. And even though there's still that little bit of a tightness, a little bit of that sensation and swelling in my foot and in my leg, it is not unbearable. And I'm just amazed at how fast and how quickly my foot and my ankle are healing, even though I feel that swelling, even though I know it's doing everything it possibly can to heal and to heal swiftly. It's amazing how good it feels in light of the intense pain that I was in on the trampoline just a little while ago, just yesterday. And it's really incredible how much it has come along. And I was very concerned at first of like, oh wow, how long is this going to take before I'm able to continue jogging and continue moving forward and doing my daily business on everything I get to do as a mom, the laundry, the standing to cook, and all of it. My feet and my ankles and my legs, they're so imperative, along with my hands. I mean, I'm so grateful for my body and all of the functions that it provides. And I'm so glad that I'm so deeply grateful today that my body has been so swift and so quick to heal. And of course, I facilitated it and supported it to the best of my ability to allow my body and set it up for the most opportune ability to do what it does. And I gave it the cold, I gave it the ice, I gave it the stretching and the breath and the energy work and the trust that it knows what it's doing. It knows how to heal me, and I'm capable. So that's the story that I was running, and wow, a huge difference it's made. I just can't imagine what it would be if I hadn't done all of those things to facilitate supporting my body in getting to the point that it is now, because even as I speak right now, I'm rubbing my ankle and I'm feeling it, and it's really quite swollen. And for as much swelling that is there, I'm really surprised that it's not creating even more intensity in the discomfort level. And it really has been very little discomfort. In fact, last night I only took 2 ibuprofen because I wanted to really facilitate lessening of the swelling, because I saw the swelling was going up last night, and for sleeping I just wanted to give my body that extra jump on trying to facilitate any pain control and anything like that. And today I haven't taken any ibuprofen or any pain anything today, so, and I don't suspect that I will need to. So just giving it the love and rubbing it. Oh, and I almost forgot, my son was so sweet. My other son, not the one who was jumping with me, but my middle son, he was so sweet, and he rubbed my foot for a half an hour. He actually rubbed my feet for about a half an hour, and I just told him, hey, just keep rubbing all of the lymph up toward my leg, and just keep rubbing it up. So he actually rubbed my feet with Tiger Balm, both of them, for about 30 minutes. So each foot got about 15 minutes, and that was really lovely and divine to just sit back, relax, and receive, and have my feet be rubbed with Tiger Balm. So all of those things I did were really wonderful to facilitate me not having a debilitating sprain. So my Tumble Bumble was actually a physical one yesterday. And that's how I tumbled and bumbled through that experience. And so I highly recommend, when something happens that takes you out for a minute and creates intense pain, whether it's physical or emotional, that you do whatever you can to facilitate your moving through that in a more easeful and loving way. And as soon as you start hearing those negative thoughts come up, thanks for sharing. Okay, I know what this is, and do whatever you can to bring in the, oh, actually, my body knows how to heal. You know what? I might not know the solution to that, but I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to hear and receive what the best answer is, and being able to create the space for yourself to figure out what that answer might be so that you can respond in a really beautiful way. If it's, say, an emotional trigger or something that comes up in an argument with a person that you're in a relationship with, or a really difficult business decision, or a client issue, or something that's been triggered, or something negative that's happened in your life, that you can look at that tumble and bumble and say, how can I see this from a different perspective and in a different light? And that brings me to just getting ready to have this conversation and this talk, this episode with you today. That when I was writing to myself, I wrote that it's lovely to have a plan, and sometimes you just have to move. Sometimes you just have to take the steps forward. Sometimes you just have to let it out. You just have to speak, or you just have to write it out and then see what wants to come out. Sometimes if you just get into that motion, into that movement, then the ideas will flow, the perspective will come. And if you get into that small action toward what it is that you do want, rather than focusing on what you don't want or all the negatives that are coming up, if you focus on where you actually want to go, rather than focusing on the perfect plan or the perfect situation before you even begin to take the steps, then that can really block you from moving forward and from even looking at something from a different perspective. So if you're focused completely on that negative and on that energy, and you don't take your focus off that, and you're not willing to move and look into a different direction, I just recommend that you take a step, a breath, lean back, relax, and breathe. And in that, move forward. Move into the action, whether it's writing or actually taking the small step toward looking at it from a different perspective, asking questions. Asking better questions will absolutely get you better answers. And another wonderful aha that I received tonight as I was writing in my journal and doing my soul journaling was, as I was writing, I noticed that my pen had a shadow underneath it as I was writing, and it got my attention this time, because not only did I have one shadow of a pen, but I had two shadows of my pen. And it really caught my attention, because I looked at it and I was like, why am I having two shadows here on my paper? What's creating the shadows? And being a photographer, of course, I'm looking at light, and okay, it must be coming from here. And so I was looking at, and I was like, oh, okay, there's two bulbs here. This is why I'm having two shadows, because one was more intense and one was not quite as intense, but there were shadows that were being cast on my paper. And it was kind of fun to watch as I was writing those two shadows, and recognized that that's another beautiful metaphor, that where are the shadows in your life that you can study more deeply and look at a little more from a different view, from a different angle? Can you look at it from the side? Can you look at it from here? Can you get above it a little bit and lean back and look at the situation? Look at the dark that you're in. Look at the shadow or the tumble, that bumble that has come up that's really negative and that hurts or that's causing pain. And how can we look at that shadow and say, what is creating my shadow? What is creating that shadow in your life? What is the the thing that is creating that shadow. And it is always whatever creates that shadow. You know what it really is? It comes down to something that blocks the light. As simple as that. A shadow is literally created by something that blocks the light. And the shadow is nothing more than the outline of the thing that's blocking the light. And so when we look at our own shadow, when we do our own shadow work and we're looking into the pieces and the parts of whether it's our grief or our upset or our frustration, our depression, our anxiety, whatever it is that we're looking at and that has a shape, when we can look at that shape and really study it a little bit more and ask, what is blocking my light? What is creating this shadow? And maybe that little nugget will assist you in looking at your depression, your anxiety, or your grief in a different way, to be able to just put it to the side for a little bit or move it to a different area. And maybe that shadow will be a little less gray, a little less black, a little less dark. Because if you study shadows, if you actually look at shadows, whether they're cast from a building or a person or a tree, not all shadows are equal. Some of them are much more dense and dark, and some of them can be a little more colorful. Some of them can be more faint, and so they're all different. And it's the same thing with our lives. Our lives are all different, and our experiences and our shadows and the trials and tribulations that we go through, our stumbles and our bumbles will all be different, and there'll be different intensities at different parts and different times in our life. And shadows are all around us. And we can look at the shadow and get stuck on the shadow and stay in the shadow and continue to block the light. Or we can ask better questions and say, what's holding back my light? What's holding back the light here? Without the judgment, without the negativity of beating yourself up for having, even if it's yourself blocking the light from coming in, without beating yourself up or beating whatever is creating that shadow, that we can look at it and say, oh, okay, I actually want to move that over here, or I'm going to put that into this box of, I'm going to file that over here, whether it's a thought, a negative thought. A wonderful tool that was given to me from one of my wonderful friends and energy workers was the idea and the concept of the filing cabinet for your mind. So there's 3 files in this filing cabinet, and one is it true? And the second is the box of in question. And the other box is the false box, the file of being at fault, the question box, and the truth box. So where do we want to place these things? Anything that comes up, whether it's a belief or something that you've been told or that you've taken on in your life, to be able to take that into question and say, okay, it's now in question. I'm going to take this thing that I feel is really, really true, and I've believed it for a long time, that whatever it is, say if it's, say you're having money problems, and there's this belief that there's never enough money, and that you can't get your bills paid on time, or that you're not having enough to pay them. Okay, so if you take that into account and say, okay, I'm going to put that into the question box, and I'm going to ask and say, is that belief really true? Is it really true that I've always been this way? Is it really true that all of my bills aren't being paid? Is it really true that I never have enough money? And you can just leave it in the question box and just be with it for a little while. Then you can go, actually sometimes I am really good at paying my bills. And it's only this one bill that I'm really feeling concerned about, or it's only these couple here. Or maybe it's just that credit card. But all your other bills are paid, and that credit card is the one that's making you feel this or believe this from whatever you've been told, whatever poverty mindset that may have been a seed that had been planted. And then you can look at that and say, okay, where do I want to file this? Do I want to file this in the truth box? Or do I want to file this into the false box? And then you can remind yourself, oh yeah, I filed that into the false box, or I've filed that into the truth box, because you get to decide. And whatever we decide in our mind, we get to be right. Our minds will prove that to us. Our minds are so amazing and brilliant that it will find case after case after case to prove it to us. Just like if you end up buying a car of a certain color, all of a sudden, and a certain brand, all of a sudden you start seeing the same cars. If you hadn't noticed them before, when you start driving that vehicle, all of a sudden you've got 1,000 best friends who have the same vehicle on the road. You see them every day. It's just an amazing thing that happens, where all of a sudden you're noticing that vehicle all the time because you're the one driving it. And it's that confirmation of your mind is now syncing that out. It's focused on that because that's the one that you're driving, and that's the one that is the new one. And anyway, so it's our minds will prove us right every time and say, see this thing. If you say, oh, I'm always just having a hard time being on time. If I continue to say that to myself over and over again, then I'm going to prove that to myself right. And every time I'm late, then it's like, see, here you are again, doing it again. No matter how many other times I have been on time and that I've kept my commitment and that I've been my word and I've shown up, or I've had to readjust and call and say, hey, you know what, I'm actually going to be a little bit behind, and do renegotiating the time frame before I'm actually late. If I continue to tell myself and believe that I'm always late and that I'm not on time, then I just feel bad about myself. And if I can take and put it into the file box of, hey, is that really true? And then I can go through and look at examples of the times that I actually have been on time, and how many times have I really actually been on time, and give myself that celebration and that credit for the times that I have. And remembering that, so that I can feel that affirmation and feel the capability that, yes, I'm able to do this. And I just read this morning from an article in the Danette May journal that I was reading, that our minds are wired to remember the negative experiences more powerfully and for longer than our positive ones. And because it's there to save us from being eaten by a tiger, or stepping into the fire again and getting burned, or falling off the cliff, or keeping us from danger. So we remember the negatives really powerfully because our minds are trying to keep us safe, and we can remember that the negative thoughts that we're thinking, or the things that come up that were negative, they're just there to remind us to be cautious, and that it's oftentimes way easier to remember because of that wiring. Now, if you had such an amazing day and all these wonderful things were happening, the chances of you remembering all the wonderful things happening when that one negative thing happened are far less. So it's part of that training of our mind, and part of that really being aware and being awake to remembering to actually tell yourself and to repeat the positive stories as much as or more than the negative ones that we're telling, because our brain automatically, emotionally remembers that negative one to try to keep us safe, even if it was wonderful, because our mind's going to remember that stubbing of our toe far more than it's going to remember that beautiful sunset, because it doesn't want to stub a toe again, because that hurt. But the beautiful sunset, there was no danger there. So if we can remember to log in our minds or in our writing or whatever way that you can assist yourself to remember all the greatness that's happened in your day, then it's such a shift. In fact, I did it for myself today. When I was doing my journaling, I've been doing a new process in my journal to write about my challenges and to write about that shadow, the parts that I'm struggling with, the parts of my experience that I can look at and say, what are my challenges and how am I growing from them? How are they providing me opportunities to grow and to learn? And what are the gifts in my challenges? And that's where I'm really getting excited to receive more nuggets and to get more growth, more exponential growth for myself, and really spring beyond my struggles or my challenges and to just grow by leaps and bounds. And today, when I did that, I wrote about the struggle that I was feeling between really being in pleasure in my day and feeling that struggle or that tug for pushing forward, that feeling, the dynamic between the pleasure and the push, the pleasure and the push. And I don't want to do the push. I want to come from that easeful space, that really divine, intuitive, connected space. And so when I wrote that, I wrote, okay, what am I? Because I don't just write the struggle down and just leave it there, because that will only, in my opinion, continue to facilitate more negative and continue to wire that track deeper and deeper, just like when you take a car back and forth in the mud, little Tonka truck, and it gets that groove deeper and deeper into that mud. It's the same thing if we continue just to do negative thoughts and we just continue to repeat them over and over again. So I'm wanting to acknowledge and look at and go deep within that shadow work, and also ask really powerful questions of how can I move through this? How can I utilize this? How can I take this struggle and this challenge and turn it into an opportunity? What opportunities is it bringing to me? Because if I really believe that life is happening for me and not to me, then life is a whole lot more fun and enjoyable, and I feel more supported and just joyful through the entire experience. So when I was writing down about my struggles and about my challenge, I decided to, how can I grow from them? And so today I just numbered my struggles, and then I numbered how I was going to grow from them, because I want to transform them. I want to get the nuggets out of where I'm growing from them. So that's what I did. And I just wrote out, and I decided in that feeling, that difference between the enjoying myself and not pushing, that the enjoying myself, I wanted to be able to recognize that I am doing my best, that will assist me in recognizing and celebrating all that I have done, so I don't feel the need to push, because I'm already doing. Because I was looking at my day and going, okay, I feel like I've been busy all day and I've done a lot, and I still feel like there's a lot that I haven't done, and that I wasn't in that total push mode and that habitual mode that is an old way of being for me, to feel like I need to push things to get them to happen. So I'm working on more of my beingness and my pleasure, and being able to flow in a more joyous and easeful way throughout my day and the things that I get to do. So with that, I said that I am accomplished, and I celebrate my wins, that I'm accomplished, and I celebrate my wins now. And so I said, now I'm accomplished and I'm celebrating my wins now. So I wrote down all of the things. I made an entire list of all the things I did in that day, in today, that were my wins. And as I was going through my list, I was remembering more and more of all of the things that I had done that I was proud of, that I was doing really well at. And here I was thinking that I hadn't done enough, and that I hadn't, what did I do with my day? Because I hadn't taken the time to actually celebrate all my little wins, and to recognize all that I really truly had done, and how I'd shown up powerfully, and all the things that I really had done. And when I wrote the list out, I felt amazing, because I went, wow, I've done so much today, and look at all of that I have done. I really have shown up today. I really have completed a lot. And today I did it really without a list. because I was a bit behind in my schedule this morning and on my miracle morning. And I just went from flow to flow and from thing to thing, and really did my day in a very organic way. And I didn't do it with a list. I wasn't checking things off. I was just going through my day in a way that I went from what I felt in that moment needed to be done, and then the next moment that needed to be done, and it felt very much more easeful. And then there was that little piece of habit that was going, hey, what about the push, and have you done enough? And that's when I wrote it out. I just did the list of everything that I'd done, big or small, didn't matter. I put down that I'd done a smoothie and I'd made lunch and done 3 batches of laundry and did mine, and my daughter did my daughter's toenails. I mean, I just wrote everything. And as I was doing that, I remembered, oh yeah, and in the morning I watered the garden, and I did this and I did this, and oh yeah, I did this. And as I was doing it, I got more and more excited because I realized just how much I really had accomplished, and was really had a moment of just satisfied. I felt satisfied once I wrote it all down, what I really had done. So if that assists you, try that on. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're in that moment where you're feeling like you're just pushing and pushing and pushing, and feeling like you need to be looking at a list and you haven't gotten all the things done that you feel like you need to do in your day, I get it. I've been there. Try the list on. Try looking at the shadows and say, what is blocking? What is blocking my light today? What's been blocking my light for a while? And what beliefs can you look at and perhaps file into a different cabinet? Maybe those are some of the things that are blocking your light. And how can you look at them and refile them into a new perspective? So what's holding back your light? And how can you shift the perspective, move it around a little bit? Can you get that shadow to perhaps move or to sway? Can you find that light? Or can you find out where that light might be coming from? And maybe let it shine in a little different direction? How can you see it a little bit differently? Would it be to write down the things and to celebrate every time you achieve something small throughout your day, every time you take that small step forward, even if you don't have a plan? How can you tumble and bumble your way through until it becomes the crawl, until it becomes the walk, and then you've got your pace and you're in your groove and you're in your flow, and then you can run, and then you can sprint, and then you can fly. You can just fly and be free and just glide and be in that ease. That sounds yummy, doesn't it? To just fly and be free and be in that ease, but also to have that accomplishment, to lift you and be the wind beneath your wings. When we can recognize all of our accomplishments. So what is blocking your light? And what is your tumble? What is your bumble? What are your challenges, and how are you growing? How are you growing and blossoming through them and with them? And where are the opportunities with the tumble and the bumble? Because sometimes we tumble and we bumble into people or to experiences that we would never have been who we are without, even if it is a difficult, despair, ugly situation. There is such growth in that pain, in that struggle. That's some of the most significant growth that one can go through, the deepest and darkest shadows that you can go through in grief, especially if you've lost someone, especially if you've lost someone that you love through death, because it's so final and it's so permanent in the physical form. So what is blocking your light? And how can you tumble and bumble your way into a different perspective or into the light? Sometimes it's just about moving out of the shadow, like a cloud, that we're not. We're not our depression. We're not our anxiety. We are not our emotions. It's like we are the sky, right? We're the sky. Just like I think it was Prince Era said, that we are the sky. And depression or anxiety or any of these negative emotions, they're simply the clouds. It's just the storm moving through, and sometimes it stays for a while. But that's all it is. And it moves, and it will be different, that we're the sky. So if we can just remember that, that's really assisted me quite often to remember that I'm not my depression. I'm not my sadness. I'm not my anger. I'm not my grief. I am not my frustration. I'm not my meanness. I am the sky. And so how are you going to paint that sky? What are you going to place upon your beautiful sky canvas? And what is holding back your light? How can you step out of the shadow for a while? Because you can come back to it. You can come and hang out in the shadow and in the shade. And you can step out into the light. You can look at it from a different perspective. You can turn. You can file it differently. You have the capability to choose how you're thinking about it, and to discover and to be with and ask those deep and powerful questions of what is holding back my light? What's creating the shadows in my life? So journal on that. Take those questions. Be with those questions. Take a deep breath. Sleep on it. See what comes up, and see how that might assist you in springing forward and transformation and healing and enlightening your path and bringing you more joy. Thank you for listening today. It has been a pleasure, and I am so glad that you tuned in today. Thank you, thank you, thank you for listening. I appreciate you, and I hope that you found some nuggets and some inspiration in our time here today. And you can find me on Light Sprinkles on YouTube and Light Sprinkles on podcast. Thank you again for tuning in, and I will see you on the next episode. Have a lovely day. Much love and light. Bye for now. Thank you.